Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Fund Finance Expert Talk. I'm Michael Mbayi, Head of Banking and Finance of the Luxembourg full-service law firm Praxio. You know the Fund Finance Expert Talk. I gather with leaders in the fund finance industry, and there are three main objectives. The first is to inspire, the second is to teach, and the third is to inform. And for this event, I have the pleasure to welcome Emma Russell. Hi, Emma.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing great. Emma is a
Thanks.
partner at Haynes Bonne. She's as well a board member of the Fund Finance Association, and she's also a chair of the ExCom committee of the FFA for for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And she's also co-chair of Women in Fund Finance for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So Emma, maybe to kick off, you can further introduce yourself and what you do at Haynes Bonne in London.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for doing this. I know we've been chatting about it for a while, so I'm glad we finally found some time to do it. So I head up the finance practice for Haynes Bonne in London. Haynes Bonne is one of the largest global fund finance teams in the market. I set up the team there about 7 years ago. We predominantly do mainly fund finance, but we cover all aspects of finance. Both on the lender and the sponsor side, and we do the full gamut of anything you can think of fund finance. So, you know, sublines, NAV, prefec, structured credit, CLO, securitization, GP lines, anything you can think of that classifies itself as fund finance in some shape or form, we will cover that.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. And arguably, you are one of the most experienced fund finance lawyers in Europe. I would be interested to know how you entered into the fund finance industry. When did you start, and what is the story behind?
I'm gonna age myself by telling you that. But I think I looked at my first Jersey unit trust financing in 2003. But anyway, and shortly after that, I was at a firm called S.J. Berwin, which then became KWM. And I think at that time, you know, leverage was a really hot market to be in, and as was real estate. And S.J. Berwin was kind of one of the pioneers of the private equity model. So we had a great deal of kind of fund clients. And I was working with a couple of partners there as a kind of fifth-year lawyer. And we were doing these liquidity lines for private equity funds, so you know, names that you will know. And at the time we were doing them with the likes of Lloyd's, what is now NatWest Markets, but what was RBS Investment Bank. And that was, you know, the very beginning of the fund finance product, I guess, in Europe. And then we started seeing the likes of what was the West LB team, which went on to become the Wells Fargo team. And they came into the market and we started working with them. I started working with them on the borrowing-based structure, which obviously was very different to how the European market had been traditionally doing things. I think at that point, around, 2008, 2009, 2010, you know, you could count the amount of lawyers doing this in London on two hands, and similarly with the banks as well. And it wasn't seen as a sexy area to be in. So, you know, everybody wanted to be doing the big leverage finance deals. But I did a lot of co-invest for funds then, a lot of GP lines. And obviously we were structuring these what becomes subscription lines and NAV facilities, and we, you know, hybrids. It was quite a fluid market. So I guess a long time ago is the answer. But the types of lenders and the law firms doing this has grown exponentially since then. And the product is significantly more sophisticated than it was at the outset. But I think particularly for Europe, you know, the key kind of people that were in the market then are still very much, you know, the people that are in the market now. Obviously it's grown, but I think it's a small market and everybody still knows each other. So it's great from that respect.
Thank you, Emma. In terms of challenges faced during your career, it would be interesting to know one main challenge that you have faced during your career and how you overcame this challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been really lucky. You know, I've been at some great firms, working with some great people, and you know, doing some great deals. I think, you know, as a woman, it's always challenging because I think, I had my son. My son was around 2 years old when I first made partner. And I think, if I'm being honest and maybe, too personal, but that was particularly challenging. You're a new partner in a firm, you're trying to build a profile, you're trying to build a business, and you've got a baby at home. So I think if I'm thinking about what's the biggest challenge, it has never been about doing the work or building the relationships or managing the team. It's just been about the balance between, home and work. I think, I'm very, very grateful for the career I have. And I think it's been a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work. Obviously there's been some bumps along the way, as there is with everything. And there was a crash in 2008, which actually, for our market, we didn't sail through it, but it impacted, but it wasn't terrible. So yeah, I mean, it's been challenging, but in a kind of good way as well, I think. And obviously setting up a new brand in London, albeit Haynes Bonne was a huge brand in the US, that has not been without its challenges.
Sure.
And we're 7 years down the line, but that has been a big test to what are we doing here? So that's been a very interesting journey as well.
Sure, yeah, I think that's indeed, you touch a point. So actually building a new brand actually in London from the scratch in fund finance is not easy in a competitive market, and where there are lenders or borrowers who have already the preferred law firm and so on. So what would be the tips from your perspective to really build an elite practice from the scratch?
Well, I mean, I guess when you say from scratch, it was from scratch. And from a European perspective, I think because the market was so small, we were quite global even then in terms of our market. And, I knew who the lawyers were in the US that were doing this. I knew who the firms were that were doing this. And, I spoke with Haynes Bonne about setting up in London. So Haynes Bonne, they pioneered this product a long time ago in the US, and they had a huge team, and they've been doing it for a long time. So in the US, everybody knew who Haynes Bonne were.
Sure.
Here, there was maybe a handful of people that knew who Haynes Bonne were. But I think I was keen. I knew that the product was going to kind of blow up in terms of, the demand was going to increase significantly. And my thought process was, I want to go somewhere, start something new on a global platform. And I think the biggest challenge was at that point, being a lender and a sponsor side lawyer, is we're not on any panels. So, Lloyd's, RBS, Barclays, Wells Fargo, they were all running the main syndicates on those deals. So it was kind of like, how are we going to figure out how to make this business work? And I knew it was a long game rather than a short game. So I think, one of the things, and people always say, oh, you guys are great at marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And that is really important. But I think what's more important is the product, and that you do good work on the deals. I've been fortunate that, the people I've recruited and the people we've worked with, everybody is a really good technical lawyer, because I think certainly my experience is you can market and you can win business, but unless your product is good, you're not going to maintain that market position. So there was a lot of pounding the pavements. I was living out in the Cotswolds when I set up the team. I moved back to London. I dragged my family back to London so I could be out every day meeting people, speaking to people. So that part was really tough. But I think, as I mentioned before, there's some very strong relationships in the market that have been going on for a number of years, which, I've been very fortunate to benefit from. The Lloyd's team, who I did a huge amount of work for in the kind of late 2000s, those are spread out across numerous lenders now, as with RBS as well. So, the relationship piece is really key, as well as the hard work. I always say to my children, the most important thing in life is hard work, which is, so I think hard work it's been hard work, and nothing has come about particularly easily. But I think the other thing to note is Haynes Bonne really understands the product. We have a huge support network of people in the US that had great depth of experience. So I could leverage off that as well. So, that's been really beneficial.
Yes, I think that totally agree with you that indeed to be a great firm, first is the quality of work. So you can do marketing and activity and so on, but first the really thing important for the client is yes, to be there for the client, and the technicalities and also the innovation and the creativity in what you do, and to be also practical. So I totally agree with this. And but yeah.
No, sorry, on you go.
Yeah, and actually to be able to build a team, so an elite team, you need actually to be as well a good mentor, because you need to recruit the people of quality and keep them and promote them. So can you give us a word about the importance of mentoring, and yes, what is it from your perspective? What is it from your perspective?
Sure. I mean, I think if I think back during my career, I didn't have any obvious mentors, and it wasn't such a thing that was discussed as it is now. I think one of the things about being a good mentor is obviously, speaking with that person and encouraging them and trying to understand what their strengths are and trying to bring that out. But I think the other key point is to kind of use your network to leverage that. I mean, I've mentored people within my firm and with the firm, to leverage your own network to promote that person, particularly for women. I think it's been important to kind of put people out there and push people to maybe a little bit out of their comfort zone. Certainly with members of my team, I've been very strong on their brand recognition and putting themselves out there. But I think, the key to being a good mentor is understanding what that person actually wants as well out of their career, and not to try to mold somebody into a mini you, because not everybody wants to be the same as you, and maybe people have different strengths. So I think with all these things, with building client relationships as well, one of the most important things is listening to what people are saying, as opposed to, projecting your thoughts onto them. So I guess I would say that's one of the more important aspects of being a mentor.
Mm-hmm. And at the Fund Expert Talk, we talk also as well about the market and the market trends. So what are you currently seeing in the market?
So, I've just had back-to-back conferences. We were in Miami last week before, and then I was at Super Return Private Credit this week. There's obviously been an ongoing narrative about, NAV, alternative lenders, all these topics that have been everyone's been talking about for a number of years. The private credit market in particular is very interesting, and that was a big topic at Super Return. And I think, in terms of how, that's come out of the liquidity crunch that we've had in Europe for the past couple of years, but it's a really interesting space to be in right now and to see what's going on there. And even, this week there's been quite a lot of kind of developments in that space. People are talking about evergreen funds, how they operate, how you put lines into them. Obviously, we've seen a lot of alternative lenders, institutional investors coming into the space. I think what's really interesting about our European market is it's so varied in terms of the types of financing solutions that we are offering. We talk about fund finance as if it's one product, but it really isn't. We're really developing very, very bespoke solutions for different types of funds, different requirements, different periods within a fund's life. And, we're not just looking at the subline anymore. It's evolved into so much more than that.
Sure, great. And as well, we talk as well about technical points at the Fund Expert Talk. So, and I would be curious if you can tell me about the key consideration for financing of open-ended fund.
Sure. This was another topic that came up at Super Return. We did a round table, and somebody was asking the question about evergreen funds. I think when people talk about open-ended funds, traditionally, you think about like a hedge fund or a fund of funds. And we've done quite a lot of financing to those structures over the years. But I think those type of funds are becoming more and more popular in the private credit and the real estate market. And I think that will continue. I guess the key considerations when you think about an open-ended fund is the way in which, you know, the investment pool works and the collateral pool works is very different to a closed-ended fund. So considerations from a technical legal perspective, you need to do your DD, but you need to do that in every fund. I think the key thing to look at for those types of structures are how the redemptions work. So in terms of the investments coming in, are there different classes of investors? Who can redeem? When can they redeem? In what manner can they redeem? So that's one of the key points, and I think it will kind of impact on a number of different parts of the credit agreement. The other point to note is tenor. So often these funds will have a lockup period or during which, you know, redemptions can't be made. And traditionally, if we're structuring lines to those, you keep the line within that lockup period. So, you know, it could be between 1 to 3 years. And that's a key point. You can still do it out with that, but you need, you know, the monitoring needs to be pretty on point. And then in terms of financial monitoring and the reporting that you would get, you know, that from an ops perspective, and I think, you know, that's maybe why it's been challenging for some banks. You know, you're asking for borrowing-based certificates all the time, redemption updates, etc. So the financial reporting needs to be much, much higher. I think more often than not, we would include some form of NAV covenant. Just, you know, I mean, that doesn't always. I mean, I guess you're talking about it in the context of sublines as well. So we don't always see a NAV covenant in a subline. The other point is the exclusion events need to be tied to the redemption notice. So you have a kind of lead-in period. So it's not, you don't want to tie it to when the redemption is actually made. You want to tie it to the notice period so that you have some buffer. So I think, you know, those are the main considerations for the most part. One other thing that we see some credit teams and makes a huge deal of sense is the clean downs as well. So that there's not, particularly before a redemption is about to happen, so you can minimize the outstandings. So, you know, 12-month clean down or whatever. But I think there is a kind of fear about providing financing to those sort of structures. But I think if you structure it correctly, there's no more risk than there is to a closed-ended fund. It just needs to be a bit more thought through, and you need to fully understand how the fund works and do a lot of deep dives into the LPA, etc., etc.
Yeah, I agree.
Or not. I don't know if that agrees with what you think.
Yeah, I agree with you indeed, because we have seen a few in the last few years of those type of transactions. So if this is structured correctly, there is no fear, and it works perfectly. And Emma, you are also, as we said in the introduction, so the chair of the Executive Committee, Europe, Middle East, Africa of the Fund Finance Association. So what is on the pipeline of the FFA for Europe? So
our hardworking admin team have just got Miami out the way, and we are already onto Europe. I don't know how many people watching this know, but you know, last year we split out the European program. So traditionally we'd had one conference day with a lot of people, a lot of panels, and a networking event in the evening. And the feedback we were getting in Europe was, you know, there's maybe room to have a senior networking event and still keep the traditional conference structure. So we're actually doing FFA University this morning as we speak, and yesterday, and there'll be some drinks reception for that this evening. And then we are hosting the symposium at the QE2 on May the 2nd, which will be all panels, some great topics, some really great speakers. And then I think we'll have a drink reception then. And then we have what we're now calling the summit, which will take place in the middle of September in Portugal. And that is really a kind of thought leadership summit for the senior people in the market to get together and share ideas, kind of explore the direction in which the market's going and consider new opportunities. So that's over a couple of days. And then obviously we have FFA Next Gen, FFA Diversity, Women in Finance. I think it's important for the FFA and for the kind of wider group that we balance everything. But there will be events for those groups as well throughout the year. And I think the FFA Next Gen in particular, they're recruiting for new people at the moment. WFF has just run a recruitment process. So we want to make sure that we're including the market and opening up the opportunity for new people to bring their thoughts to the table. So that's a process we've kind of undergone this year. And we're also kind of considering the governance of the FFA in Europe at the moment as well, just to kind of make sure everybody's incorporated and we're keeping momentum in terms of moving forward, because the market's moving pretty quickly. So I think Miami was the biggest, obviously, significant turnout of people that we've had for a long time. That was, an excellent conference, and where does it go from here? When we're talking about doing a conference in London, there's not that many places we can hold as many people as we now are. And when I think back to we did those first couple of conferences in Europe in Claridge's, it seems like 100 people in the room or whatever. It seems like a long time ago. So yeah, busy calendar for FFA, WFF, Next Gen this year. But yeah, I mean, I would urge anybody that kind of wants to be more involved with the FFA to reach out and speak to somebody that that's kind of within the organization, because as everybody knows, we have a great small admin team, but a lot of us are also kind of doing this as a side job to the day job. So the more volunteers, the better, I think.
Thank you very much, Emma, and thanks for your time today. It has been a great talk, and to the audience, stay tuned to our LinkedIn page to be aware of the next Fund Expert Talk. Bye-bye. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Michael. And sorry, congratulations on the new role. I didn't get a chance to say that. So I'm looking forward to speaking to you more about Praxio and what they're doing in the market as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. I appreciate that.